Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. Ohio is taking center stage in the abortion debate. This comes after a 10-year-old from Franklin County traveled to Indiana to get an abortion since she was past 6 weeks pregnant. The man accused in the case, 27-year-old Gerson Fuentes, admitted to raping the victim at least 2 times. The detective also confirmed that the victim went to Indianapolis on June 30th to have an abortion. Before Fuentes was arraigned, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost called the report about the girl's abortion into question. 10 TV's Lindsay Mills questioned him about his comments.
Do you believe you cast a doubt too early when the investigation hadn't yet wrapped up?
Not at all. I was casting doubt upon the single source story in the Indianapolis Star by a known political activist. It just didn't feel right. And when a week and more went by, and even the Washington Post was starting to question the veracity of it, I saw the same things. I am glad that we now have a good outcome here with an arrest.
Your final comment in that Fox News interview was that you believed the abortion could have been done here in Ohio. Why did you believe that?
Well, it may have been able to be. There's an exception in the law, both for the life of the mother and for a medical emergency, which are defined terms. So that's a question of fact, ultimately, and without knowing the identity or the medical history or the condition of the victim, the survivor of this horrible crime, you can't really say for sure. But knowing what I know as a career prosecutor, I think it very likely that one or both of the exceptions in current Ohio law might have applied in this situation.
Under the current law, it is up to the provider to determine whether or not those exceptions are at play.
That's correct.
So would have a doctor had to, or a provider, would they have had to diagnose this 10-year-old with one of the conditions that's listed in the language of the law?
Well, understand there's not just a list of conditions, there's a description of a major bodily function being impaired. So yes, the doctor is the one that makes that determination.
We also talk with U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown about this case and the national attention it's putting on our state. Here's what he had to say.
I know because Ohio has such extreme language on abortion, no exceptions for rape or incest, few protections for the life of the mother, that we are beginning to lose some people who are considering moving to Ohio to practice medicine, maybe to go to college. I'm already hearing stories, people are having second thoughts. Then you have this awful, despicable story where high-ranking, far-right political figures with a political agenda that they mocked, and they mocked this story about the 10-year-old, showing no respect and showing just a mean-spiritedness, saying it didn't happen. Well, it did happen. And they owe an apology directly to the family of this 10-year-old as they owe to the whole state. This extreme law that no abortions after the 6th week, regardless of whether it's rape or incest, few protections for the life of the mother, is so out of step.
After all the controversy, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost sent a legal explainer of Ohio's heartbeat law. In it, he says there is no gestational time limit and the statute has 3 exceptions. One is to prevent the death of the mother. Another is due to a serious risk of the substantial and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant mother, or third, in cases of an ectopic pregnancy. This week, Ohio moved one step closer to a total ban on abortion. Republican State Rep Gary Click introduced House Bill 704. That bill would begin the ban at conception. That piece of legislation would include an exception to save the life of the mother, but not an exception for victims of rape or incest. It also has the potential to ban forms of birth control like IUDs. As Ohio's law stands now, abortion is banned after 6 weeks when a heartbeat can be detected. This week, I talked with the Ohio Democratic Party chair about where reproductive rights stand in our state.
Republicans like Mike DeWine have spent the last 50 years methodically attacking our reproductive rights, and it's culminated in this moment. And now he wants to go as far as he can to rip away rights that belong to a woman, her doctor, and their families. And we know that there are too many Ohioans out there who can't afford to have us sit on the sidelines and give up on this fight. The right for women's health care, the right for women to choose their reproductive freedoms is really important. And it's a fight that is not short, it's not easy, but it's more important than ever.
Do you feel that this could be one of those pivotal issues? I saw a story from a former colleague in Las Vegas she was interviewing a woman who'd always voted Republican and is now making this sort of her singular voting issue. Is that something you see happening here in our state?
We absolutely see it happening here in this state. I think for many women, Roe was decided law. We never really thought that this could be overturned. And now that it has, and now that we see that Republicans in Ohio are doing everything they can to further restrict women's healthcare choices, women in Ohio are paying attention. And it's not just women. I have been stopped so many times by men who have daughters, nieces, wives who've lived through really hard medical decisions after going through IVF with their families that really see this as a critical issue for women, because it is a life and death issue for women. It is an economic issue for families. And we are seeing this really mobilize people off the sidelines in Ohio this year, everything from how they're going to vote to what action they're going to take. We did a rally at the State House the Sunday after the decision came down from the Supreme Court. Our final crowd estimates were over 5,000 people that we got the word out in less than 48 hours. But more importantly, we had over 3,100 people sign up to take action to support pro-choice candidates in their neighborhoods and their communities. And so the reverberations of this decision, and in particular, the extremism that Ohio Republicans have on this issue, is really coming to the center of the work we're doing around mobilizing our activists, but also talking to voters.
Planned Parenthood of Greater Ohio has endorsed Tim Ryan for U.S. Senate. He talked on a press call about what he thinks needs to happen since the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
In the short term, we have to do two things. We have to protect women's privacy. There is no way that we can allow these governments and some of these states to start monitoring women and their healthcare data or health tracking apps that they may have been using now for years. That data needs to be protected. And I don't think any company should be punished if they are saying that they will cover their employees' health care across state lines and pay for travel and these other things. I think, again, talk about infringement on free markets and on a business's decision. These are the people who want to get government out of the businesses and how they operate. And now they're going to jump in with fines and punishment if a certain company wants to provide certain kinds of health care to their employees. Again, that's so extreme. It's not even funny. And you put that all together, and it's a pretty scary time now for women in the state of Ohio.
Tim Ryan is running against J.D. Vance for Ohio's U.S. Senate seat. Face the State did ask J.D. Vance for an interview to talk about the abortion debate happening in our state right now. We were told he didn't have time in his schedule, but his campaign arranged an interview with the anti-abortion group Ohio Right to Life. We asked him about the national attention the abortion case in our state involving the 10-year-old girl is getting. Even President Biden commented about it. Here's what he had to say.
In these terrible circumstances, the solution can never be to kill an innocent human life. And unfortunately, that's where the president of the United States even jumped to when it came to this particular circumstance. And it's not just, they're not just making it about the 10-year-old girl, they're using this one particular circumstance to justify the over 90% of elective abortions that are taking place in this nation. So our focus again should be on healing for this little girl. It should be on getting her the help and assistance that she needs as a society and as a state and as a country. But unfortunately, it's being used to justify abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. And I don't think that's right.
Day one is in the books for the new nationwide 988 mental health hotline. We're going to take a look at the impact of this change. Plus, an email from AEP says crews weren't ready ahead of the storm that led to those massive power outages. You will hear what the company president says when we ask him about the exchange. 988, the new number to call to support yourself or perhaps a loved one experiencing a suicidal crisis, mental health, or addiction-related distress. Ohio has made the transition to the new nationwide 988 suicide and crisis lifeline. It happened on Saturday, just yesterday. Congress designated the new 988 dialing code to operate through the existing National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and its network of more than 200 locally operated and funded crisis centers across the country. I talked with board-certified clinical psychologist Dr. Craig Bryan from the Ohio State University College of Medicine, who told me the move to 3 digits will have a meaningful impact.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that it's likely to make is that it's going to, I think, increase accessibility to the crisis hotline. And I say that because, of course, a 3-digit number that's very easy to remember, I think, is going to have a meaningful impact. Many of us who have been working in the suicide prevention community for a long time know that the existing number, this long, really arduous, hard to remember number is not always easy for people to remember, especially when they're in crisis.
I realize it's different probably for every person who calls, but can you give us an idea of what happens when somebody decides to dial, whether it be the 7 digits or the new 3 digits?
Yeah, so the number is basically, the call is routed to a centralized location, and then based upon where a person is located, that centralized hub will then try to connect that caller with a call center in their geographic region. And so depending on what state or what city you're calling from, ideally you'll be talking to somebody who's fairly close by geographically. If those lines are full, then in essence they just kind of keep rerouting to find the closest next available counselor. Someone is going to pick up, they're going to identify themselves, introduce themselves, and in essence they're going to say, what can I do to help you today? And at that point, the caller can express whatever is on their mind, share whatever is happening within their lives, and that person at the call center is going to provide some counseling, some support, and do what they can to perhaps help the caller to solve the problem.
Ohioans in all 88 counties can call, text, or chat for free 24/7 crisis support. The existing 10-digit National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that's on your screen launched in 2005, and it's going to remain active following the transition to 988. This week, AEP went before the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio to explain its response to that massive power outage last month. Meantime, 10TV obtained internal emails from the PUCO to AEP. The commission warned the company a day before about the pending storm. The PUCO asked if AEP had pre-positioned restoration assets, i.e. field crews. An AEP employee responded it had not. 10TV News reporter Kevin Landers took that email to the AEP president and CEO for reaction.
This is an internal email that we got. This is dated June 13th, 11:40 a.m. and this comes from Paul De Silva from the PUCO, who's asking AEP, this looks like to be some pending storm activity possibly coming our way. Could you please check and see if it means AEP has pre-positioned any restoration assets? AEP responds, AEP Ohio did not have pre-positioned restoration assets. Currently approximately 160,000 customers out. So a day before the storm hits, PUCO is warning you there's a storm coming. Do you have assets? And AEP's response is, we don't.
Yeah, seeing that for the first time, I'll just tell you what I know. We do pre-stage. When we see major events come through, we do pre-stage. This one, just like any thunderstorm, you can see, sometimes they break up, sometimes they don't. When you pre-stage resources, you're tying up resources, cost customers money too. So we try to balance that. And I don't know to the extent if we pre-staged for this event, but we did act quickly.
AEP admitted that a majority of the power outages were from a forced outage, not the storm. The company said it had just 5 minutes to act when the electrical grid became overloaded because of high demand, high heat, and storm damage. They said if not for that, the result would have been catastrophic, with more people out of power for longer periods. A major I-70 update is complete, and this means the drive from Columbus to Dayton, it should now be smoother and faster. It took 4 years to add a third lane in each direction of I-70. Last week, ODOT celebrated the completion of that final section in Springfield between U.S. Route 68 and State Route 72.
There's a lot of things that make Ohio a very strong and a state that is really looking to the future. But one of the things that makes us strong is our infrastructure and our highways. One of the advantages that we have in Ohio, and I hear this time and time again as I talk to CEOs and try to get them to bring more businesses to Ohio, one of the things that they recognize is our location. Within a day's drive of right here, we've got 60% of the population of the United States. We've got 60% of the population of Canada. I don't have to tell you all about the interstates that cross Ohio. So that is a competitive advantage. But it's only a competitive advantage if we keep our roads up.
The $50 million project also replaced the existing pavement and 7 bridges along the route. Be safe out there. An Ohio man's testimony on January 6th and what he did afterward made headlines this week. You'll hear why he says he stormed the Capitol on that day and what he says could have prevented the situation from escalating. An Ohio man took center stage during the January 6th hearing on Capitol Hill this past week. Stephen Ayers, who is from our state, pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct at the Capitol, and he testified. He talked about what motivated him to go to Washington, D.C. that day.
Mr. Ayers, there were many people in the crowd that day, January 6th, including you, who were not part of an extremist group. I'd like to start by having you tell the American people a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us about your life before January 6th?
Yeah, basically nothing but a family man and a working man. Worked at the company, a cabinet company up in Northeast Ohio for going on 20 years. Family's my life. I was a supervisor there, so that took up a lot of my a lot of my free time. Other than that, with my family, camping, playing basketball, playing games with my son.
Just what any ordinary American citizen, family man would do.
Yep, exactly.
So this committee has reviewed thousands of hours of surveillance footage from January 6th. During this review, we identified you entering the Capitol as we see in this video. Mr. Ayers, why did you decide to come to Washington on January 6th?
For me personally, I was, pretty hardcore into the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I followed, President Trump, on all of the websites, he basically put out, come to Stop the Steal rally, and I felt like I needed to be down here.
So you basically learned about the rally on social media, and at some point made a decision to come to Washington.
Yep. I had some friends I found out were coming down, and I just hopped on with them right at the tail end when I found out, and came down here with them.
Mr. Ayers, when you entered the Capitol last year, did you believe that the election had been stolen?
At that time, yeah. Everything that I was seeing online, I definitely believed that that's exactly what that was the case.
And when you heard from President Trump that the election was stolen, how did that make you feel?
Oh, I was very upset, as were most of his supporters. That's basically what got me to come down here.
And do you still believe the election was stolen?
Not so much now. I got away from all the social media when January 6th happened. Basically deleted it all. I started doing my own research and everything. And for me, for something like that to be that, for that to actually take place, it's too big. There's no way you can keep something like that quiet, as big as something like that. With all the lawsuits being shot down one after another, that was mainly what convinced me.
Mr. Ayers, you were in that crowd at the rally and then the crowd that marched to the Capitol. When you arrived on the ellipse that morning, were you planning on going to the Capitol?
No, we didn't actually plan to go down there. We went basically to see the Stop the Steal rally, and that was it.
So why did you decide to march to the Capitol?
Well, basically, the president, got everybody riled up, told everybody to head on down. So we basically were just following what he said.
We know that you illegally entered the Capitol that afternoon and then left the Capitol area later on. What made you decide to leave?
Basically, when President Trump put his tweet out, we literally left right after that come out. To me, if he would have done that earlier in the day, 1:30, we wouldn't be in this. Maybe we wouldn't be in this bad of a situation.
After the hearing, Ayers apologized to 2 police officers who defended the Capitol against the insurrectionists. The next hearing is set for July 21st. The country's new inflation report is out, and it shows the problem is only getting worse. June's numbers show inflation rose more than 9%, the highest yearly jump in more than 40 years. The price of gas is up almost 60% from June of 2021. Rent went up nearly 6% in that same time frame, and food prices have increased more than 10%. This week, a group of Republican lawmakers, including Ohio Senator Rob Portman, talked about the problem.
A lot of lower middle income folks in Ohio are suffering the worst, some of whom have long commutes. I'm hearing from them. I was home over the break to talk about other issues, but pretty much everybody got around to inflation, no matter what the other topic was that we talked about. And this is something that, unfortunately, is going to get worse, not better, unless we change policies.
The Federal Reserve is expected to once again raise interest rates later this month, but it may not impact prices until the fall. We thank you all for being here with us today on Face the State. Have a great week.